Take your business elsewhere, my brother Marcus sneered, looking down at me from the top of his pristine marble staircase. The same staircase we used to slide down as kids, much to our mother's dismay. Now, at 35, I stood at the bottom, clutching my small suitcase, feeling like a stranger in what used to be our family home. My name is Olivia Bennett, and this wasn't how I'd imagined my life would turn out. Just 6 months ago, I was a successful corporate lawyer, married to who I thought was the love of my life, living in a beautiful penthouse in downtown Boston. But after discovering my husband's years of financial fraud and infidelity, I was now broke, divorced, and standing in my childhood home, begging my younger brother for help. "Marcus, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just need a place to stay for a few weeks until I can get back on my feet. The FBI froze all our assets during the investigation. I literally have nowhere else to go." He laughed, the sound echoing through the grand foyer. "That's rich, Olivia. All those years of looking down on me for taking over Dad's construction business while you pursued your fancy law career. What was it you said at Dad's funeral? At least one of us is doing something meaningful with our lives." I winced at the memory. I had been arrogant, drunk on my own success, convinced that my brother's decision to run our father's simple construction company was beneath our potential. The irony wasn't lost on me now. Marcus was a multi-millionaire, having transformed Dad's local business into one of the largest development companies on the East Coast. I was wrong, I admitted, swallowing my pride. I was arrogant and cruel. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't pay the bills, does it, sis?" Marcus adjusted his expensive suit, a subtle reminder of our reversed fortunes. "Maybe you should have thought about that before marrying James without a prenup, even after I warned you about his shady business dealings." The mention of James made my stomach turn. My ex-husband had seemed perfect, charming, successful, ambitious. I had ignored all the red flags, including Marcus's warnings, too blinded by love and pride to see what was right in front of me. By the time the FBI came knocking, James had already fled the country with millions in stolen funds, leaving me to deal with the aftermath. "You were right about him," I conceded, fighting back tears. "You were right about everything. Please, Marcus, we're family." "Family?" He descended a few steps, his expression hardening. "Where was this family sentiment when Mom was sick? When I begged you to come home and help, you were too busy with your high-profile cases to spare even a weekend." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. Our mother had battled cancer for 2 years before passing away last spring. I had visited when I could, but Marcus had been the one there every day, balancing the company and Mom's care while I made excuses about important cases in client meetings. "I know I wasn't there enough," I whispered. "I have so many regrets, Marcus. Please give me a chance to make things right." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, a hint of the little brother who used to follow me around, who looked up to me with unwavering admiration. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You want to make things right?" He reached the bottom of the stairs, standing directly in front of me. "Start by taking responsibility for your choices. You chose your career over family. You chose James over my warnings. Now you can choose to figure this out on your own." "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. "That's not my problem," he replied coldly. "You're the brilliant lawyer. Figure it out. Just don't come crying to me when your perfect life falls apart. You're not welcome here." The front door opened behind me and Marcus's security guard stepped in, a clear signal that our conversation was over. I looked at my brother one last time, searching for any sign of the close relationship we once had, but found only cold indifference. As I stepped out into the chilly autumn air, the heavy door closed behind me with a final thud. Standing on the driveway of my childhood home, watching the security gate shut, I felt more alone than ever. My phone buzzed. Another email from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit requesting my cooperation in their ongoing investigation of James's schemes. They believed I must have known something, must have been complicit. How could I not have noticed the signs? The late-night phone calls, the mysterious business trips, the sudden influx of wealth that seemed too good to be true. I walked to the nearby park, the same one where Marcus and I used to play as kids. Sitting on a bench, I opened my laptop and started searching for cheap hotels. My credit cards were frozen, but I had managed to withdraw about $2,000 in cash before everything collapsed. It wouldn't last long, but it was all I had. A news article popped up. Marcus's latest development project, a luxury residential complex in downtown Boston. The photos showed him at the groundbreaking ceremony, looking confident and successful. The headline praised him as a visionary developer transforming the city's skyline. I remembered teasing him when he first took over Dad's company. "Still playing with trucks and dirt, little brother?" I had said dismissively. Now his trucks and dirt had built an empire, while my carefully constructed life had crumbled to dust. Opening my email, I started sending out job applications to small law firms, knowing my reputation was probably already tainted by association with James's crimes. Even though I'd been cleared of any wrongdoing, who would want to hire a lawyer who couldn't spot fraud happening under her own roof? As night fell, I checked into a budget motel on the outskirts of town. The room was small and musty, with water stains on the ceiling and springs poking through the mattress, a far cry from my former penthouse with its panoramic city views and designer furniture. I sat on the bed, finally allowing myself to cry, not just for my current situation, but for all the choices that had led me here. For pushing away my brother when he needed me, for ignoring his warnings about James, for letting success and ambition blind me to what really mattered. My phone buzzed again, a text from my former law partner. "Partners meeting tomorrow. Given the circumstances, we think it's best if you tender your resignation. Save everyone the embarrassment." I didn't bother responding. They'd already made up their minds, just like Marcus had. In their eyes, I was toxic, tainted by association. 20 years of education, hard work, and dedication, all erased by my husband's crimes and my own poor judgment. The next morning, I walked to a nearby diner, nursing a cup of coffee while scanning job listings. A news alert caught my eye. James had been spotted in the Cayman Islands. Of course he had. He was probably living up on a beach somewhere while I was left picking up the pieces. "More coffee, hon?" the waitress asked, her kind eyes taking in my rumpled appearance. "Please," I nodded, managing a small smile. "And maybe some advice on where I might find work around here." She studied me for a moment. "Well, my sister runs a small legal aid clinic downtown. They're always looking for help. Pays not much, but it's honest work." Legal aid. A year ago, I would have laughed at the suggestion. Now it sounded like a lifeline. "Thank you," I said sincerely, writing down the address. "I really appreciate it." That evening, my phone buzzed. Marcus. My heart leaped, but I let it go to voicemail. His message was brief and businesslike. "Just making sure you're not dragging my name through the mud while you're job hunting. The Bennett name still means something in this town, even if you don't." I deleted the message, fighting back tears. The brother who once looked up to me now saw me as nothing but a liability, and I had no one to blame but myself. 3 months after starting at the legal aid clinic, I had settled into a routine that would have been unrecognizable to my former self. My designer wardrobe had been sold piece by piece to afford a tiny studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant. The constant smell of cooking oil was a far cry from my former penthouse. But at least it was mine. I was reviewing a tenant rights case one morning when Sarah burst into the office, her face unusually grave. "Olivia, you need to see this." She handed me her tablet, open to a breaking news article. The headline made my heart stop. "Bennett Development Group under federal investigation. Allegations of financial irregularities surface." The article detailed suspicious patterns in Marcus's company financials, suggesting potential fraud in their recent foreign investments. The same luxury development project he'd been so proud of was now under scrutiny. "Your brother's company?" Sarah asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak as I read further. The FBI was involved, the same unit that had investigated James. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "I hope you're happy now. Your friends at the FBI are trying to destroy me too." I stared at the message, anger rising. Even now, he thought this was about me, about revenge, as if I'd somehow orchestrated this to get back at him. "Take the day," Sarah said, squeezing my shoulder. "Family comes first." Family comes first. The words echoed in my head as I walked to the construction site mentioned in the article. The once bustling project was eerily quiet, with only a few workers milling around. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off parts of the site. Standing there, watching my brother's dream project crumble, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, let him see how it feels to have everything questioned, to have his reputation destroyed overnight. But a stronger part remembered the little brother who used to run to me with his scraped knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix everything. My phone rang again. Marcus. This time I answered. Come to gloat. His voice was bitter, strained. No, I replied quietly. I came to help. He laughed harshly. Help? Like you helped Mom. Like you helped Dad's legacy. No thanks, Olivia. I'm not that desperate. Marcus, listen to me. I know what you're going through. I know how the FBI works, how they build these cases. Let me help you navigate this. You know how they work because your husband was a criminal. He spat. I'm nothing like James. No, you're not. I agreed. You're my brother. And despite everything, I still believe in you. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost picture him pacing in his office like he used to do when we were kids and he was trying to solve a difficult math problem. The investors, he finally said, his voice smaller now. They promised returns that seemed too good to be true. I should have done more due diligence, but we needed the capital for the expansion. I closed my eyes, understanding washing over me. He hadn't committed fraud. He'd been caught up in someone else's scheme, just like I had been with James. Send me everything, I said firmly. All the contracts, all the correspondence. I'll review it tonight. Why would you help me? He asked, suspicion clear in his voice. After how I treated you. Because you're my little brother, I replied simply, and because I know what it's like to watch everything you've built collapse around you. That evening, I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by printouts of contracts and financial statements. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. The foreign investors who had seemed like Marcus's salvation were actually part of an elaborate money laundering operation. They had used his legitimate business as a cover for their illegal activities. I worked through the night, making notes, highlighting suspicious patterns, drawing on everything I had learned from James' case. By morning, I had a clear picture of what we were dealing with. Marcus arrived at my apartment at dawn, looking like he hadn't slept either. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, taking in my humble living conditions. Nice place, he said, attempting his usual sarcasm but falling short. It's not much, I admitted, but it's honest. Come in. We have work to do. He sat at my small kitchen table, looking out of place in his expensive suit. I laid out my findings, explaining what I had discovered about the investors. They targeted you specifically, I explained. Your company's rapid growth and clean reputation made you the perfect vehicle for their operation. They never intended for their investment to be legitimate. I should have seen it, he muttered, running his hands through his hair. Dad would be so disappointed. No, I said firmly. Dad would be proud of what you've built, and he'd be proud of how you're going to fight to protect it. Marcus looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my little brother again. Not the successful businessman, but the kid who used to believe his big sister could solve any problem. How do we fight this? He asked. First, we go to the FBI voluntarily, I said. We show them you're a victim, not a perpetrator. Then we trace every dollar, every transaction. We prove your innocence. We? Yes, we. I may have lost everything, Marcus, but I haven't lost my skills. Let me help you save what Dad built. He was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers spread across my table. Why didn't you fight like this for your own case? With James? The question caught me off guard, because with James, I was ashamed. I felt like I deserved what happened because I'd been so blind. But you were just trying to grow Dad's company, to build something real. You don't deserve to lose it all because some criminals took advantage of your ambition. Marcus nodded slowly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know? About James? Any of it? No, I said firmly, meeting his eyes. I was as shocked as everyone else. I should have seen the signs, should have listened to your warnings. But I was too proud, too convinced of my own judgment. He absorbed this, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand, the first affectionate gesture between us in years. Okay, he said. Let's fight this. Together. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with FBI agents, forensic accountants, and lawyers. I took a leave of absence from the legal aid clinic, throwing myself completely into saving my brother's company. One evening, as we pored over documents in his office, Marcus suddenly laughed. What's funny? I asked, looking up from a particularly complex financial statement. Remember when we used to play office in Dad's study? You were always the boss, making me sort papers and fetch coffee. I smiled at the memory. You were a terrible assistant. You kept trying to build paper airplanes out of Dad's invoices. Yeah, well, look at us now. Working together in a real office, trying to save the family business. As we left the office that night, Marcus turned to me. Move back home. The house is too big for just me anyway. And it's more secure than your apartment. Plus, I miss having you around. For the first time in months, I laughed genuinely. Deal. But I get to keep the bigger bedroom. Don't push your luck, sis. As we drove home together, I realized that sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to remember what matters most. Marcus and I had both faced professional crises, but in doing so, we'd found our way back to being a family. The road ahead would be challenging, possibly dangerous, but we'd face it the way we should have all along, as siblings, as partners, as Bennetts. The transition back to living in our family home was surreal. My childhood bedroom remained exactly as I had left it, including the law school acceptance letters I had proudly pinned to the bulletin board. Marcus had preserved everything, even though he had claimed to resent me all these years. One morning, 3 weeks after moving back in, I was reviewing case files in Dad's old study when our FBI protection detail burst in. We need to move you both. Now, Agent Torres's tone left no room for argument. We intercepted communications suggesting an imminent threat. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face tense. What kind of threat? The kind that involves professional hitmen arriving from Eastern Europe. Torres replied grimly. Get your essentials. You have 5 minutes. As we hurriedly packed our bags, I caught Marcus staring at Dad's portrait in the hallway. We built all this legally, he said quietly. Every contract, every project. We did it right. How did we end up here? Because bad people took advantage of good ones, I replied, placing a hand on his shoulder. But we're going to fix it. The safe house was a modest cabin outside the city. As we settled in, Torres briefed us on what they had discovered. The crime syndicate had lost millions when we exposed their money laundering operation. Now, they wanted revenge. Your sister's investigation hit them hard, Torres explained to Marcus. She found connections we'd been trying to trace for years. Marcus looked at me with newfound respect. Guess all those years of corporate law weren't wasted after all. The skills weren't wasted, I agreed. I just used them for the wrong things. That evening, as we sat by the cabin's fireplace reviewing more documents, Marcus's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. They're offering a deal, he said, handing me the phone. If we back off, retract our statements about the fraud, they'll guarantee our safety and even restore the investment. I read the message, my lawyer's mind already analyzing the implications. It's a trap. Even if we agreed, they'd never let us live knowing what we know. I know, he sighed. But the company, Olivia, we're losing contracts every day this investigation continues. People are getting laid off. I thought about Dad, about how he had built his company on principles of honesty and hard work. We can rebuild contracts, I said firmly. We can't rebuild our integrity. Marcus nodded slowly. Dad always said, a Bennett's word is their bond. Exactly, and we gave our word to make this right. As if in response to our decision, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video link. With trembling fingers, he pressed play. The footage showed his latest construction site erupting in flames. Emergency vehicles surrounded the area as years of work burned to the ground. That's their answer, he whispered, his voice breaking. They're going to destroy everything. I watched my brother, the successful, confident businessman, crumple under the weight of seeing his life's work burn. Without thinking, I pulled him into a hug like I used to do when we were kids and he had nightmares. We'll rebuild, I promised. All of it, together. Torres and his team worked through the night, coordinating with local authorities. The fire had been professionally set, designed to look like an accident. But we all knew the truth. They're escalating, Torres warned. This is just the beginning. He was right. Over the next few days, we watched helplessly as more disasters struck. Equipment mysteriously malfunctioned at other sites. Key employees received threats. Suppliers suddenly canceled long-standing contracts. But amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. Our employees, instead of running scared, rallied around us. They remembered how Dad had treated them, how Marcus had continued his legacy of treating workers like family. We're not going anywhere, Mr. Bennett, our site foreman declared during a video call. Your father gave me a chance when nobody else would. We stand with you. Their loyalty brought tears to Marcus's eyes. For the first time, I truly understood what he had built, not just a successful company, but a community. Late one night, unable to sleep, I found Marcus in the cabin's kitchen, staring at old photos on his phone. Remember this? He asked, showing me a picture of us at Dad's first construction site. We were both covered in dirt, grinning proudly as we helped lay the foundation. You were so excited to use the tiny shovel Dad bought you. I smiled at the memory. And you kept trying to organize the workers' lunch breaks more efficiently. He chuckled. Even then, you were the brains of the operation. We made a good team, I said softly. We still do. He looked at me seriously. Why did we stop being a team? Because I got lost, I admitted. I thought success meant having the biggest office, the most prestigious clients. I forgot what Dad always said about building things that last. You know what his favorite project was? Marcus asked. That small community center we built in the poor part of town. The one that barely broke even. He said it mattered more than any luxury development because it gave people hope. Something clicked in my mind. Marcus, that's it. The community impact. That's how we fight back. What do you mean? I grabbed my laptop, suddenly energized. These criminals succeed by isolating their targets. But we're not isolated. We have the community behind us. Working through the night, we developed a new strategy. Instead of just fighting the legal battle, we would show the world what Bennett Development Group really stood for. The next morning, we called an emergency virtual meeting with all employees. Marcus spoke from the heart, explaining everything, the threats, the fraud, the pressure to give in. But we're not giving in, he declared. We're going to show them what happens when they mess with family. And make no mistake, every person in this company is family. The response was overwhelming. Workers offered to take pay cuts to keep projects going. Local businesses pledged support. Even our competitors reached out, recognizing that this fight was bigger than just one company. Torres watched all this with growing interest. You're making them nervous, he told us. They're used to victims going quietly. This public support makes their usual tactics less effective. But we knew the danger wasn't over. If anything, we were more vulnerable now that we had taken such a public stand. Every day brought new threats, new attempts to break our resolve. Yet somehow, being together made it easier to bear. Marcus and I fell into a rhythm, working side by side like we had as kids. He handled the operational challenges while I focused on the legal strategy. We complemented each other perfectly, just as Dad had always said we would. One evening, as we reviewed security footage from our protected sites, Marcus suddenly asked, "Do you regret it? Coming back to help me after how I treated you?" I thought about my tiny apartment above the Chinese restaurant, about the humbling work at the legal aid clinic, about all the lessons I had learned in losing everything. No, I said honestly. I regret a lot of things, Marcus, but not this. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. He nodded, understanding. We were both different people now than we had been just months ago. Our struggles had stripped away the pretenses, the old resentments, leaving only what mattered, family. The Bennett siblings were back, stronger than ever, ready to show the world what family really means. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday morning, 6 months after our world first started unraveling. I was reviewing security footage for what felt like the 1,000th time when I noticed something peculiar, a familiar face at different construction sites just days before each accident. Marcus, I called out, my heart racing. Look at this. He hurried over, coffee mug in hand. The footage showed a well-dressed man, ostensibly a potential investor, touring our sites. But his visits perfectly preceded each disaster. That's Viktor Petrov, Marcus said, his face darkening. He was the one who first approached us about the foreign investment. I quickly pulled up more footage, and there he was, always in the background, always watching. This wasn't just sabotage. They had been studying us, learning our patterns. Call Torres, I said, already reaching for my phone. This is what we've been waiting for. The FBI moved quickly. Within hours, they had teams tracking Petrov's movements. He'd gotten sloppy, too confident in his ability to hide in plain sight. That arrogance would be his downfall. We've got him, Torres announced 2 days later, striding into our safe house. And better yet, he's talking. Turns out he's not as loyal to his bosses as they thought. The information Petrov provided was the key to everything. He exposed the entire operation, how they targeted successful construction companies, used them for money laundering, and then destroyed them when they got too close to the truth. You two changed the pattern, Torres explained. Usually their targets give in to the threats, try to hide the evidence. But you fought back publicly. It made them nervous. Marcus squeezed my hand. We fought back because we had something worth fighting for. The arrest started the next day. FBI raids across multiple cities took down most of the syndicate's leadership. Our nightmare was finally ending. But the real work was just beginning. The company had taken serious hits during the investigation. Projects delayed, contracts canceled, reputation damage. Rebuilding would take years. Maybe this is our chance, I said one evening, sitting in Dad's old office for the first time in months. To rebuild not just the company, but what it stands for. Marcus looked thoughtful. What do you mean? Remember what you told me about Dad's favorite project? The community center. What if we refocus the company on projects that matter? Not just luxury developments, but things that make a real difference. The profit margins would be smaller, he warned, though I could see the idea intrigued him. But the impact would be bigger, I countered. And after everything that's happened, isn't that what really matters? The next morning, we called a company-wide meeting. Our employees had stuck with us through the worst. They deserved to be part of what came next. Bennett Development Group is changing, Marcus announced. We're going back to our roots, building things that matter, that help communities grow. The response was overwhelming. Workers who had been with Dad shared stories of the projects that had meant the most to them. Younger employees offered ideas for new community-focused developments. Our first new project would be rebuilding the site that had been burned down. But instead of the planned luxury condos, we would create affordable housing with a community center and small business spaces. Dad would love this, Marcus said as we reviewed the plans. It's exactly what he always wanted for the company. For us too, I added. Working together, building something meaningful. The transformation wasn't easy. Some investors pulled out, uncomfortable with our new direction. But others, drawn by our story and vision, stepped in. Local communities that had once viewed developers with suspicion now welcomed us as partners. 1 year after that terrifying night when the FBI first warned us about the threats, Marcus and I stood at the grand opening of our new development. What had once been a site of destruction had become a symbol of renewal. When I was at my lowest point, I told the crowd, my brother gave me a chance to help save our family's legacy. What we discovered was that legacy isn't just about buildings or businesses, it's about people, community, and doing what's right. Marcus took the microphone next, and when I thought I was going to lose everything, my sister reminded me what our company really stands for. Dad always said, build things that last. That's not just about bricks and mortar. It's about building hope, building community, building family. After the ceremony, as we watched families explore their new homes, Marcus turned to me. You know, we still haven't discussed your official role in the company. I raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Well, we could use a chief ethics officer, he grinned. Someone to keep us honest, remind us what matters. Plus, your legal experience would be invaluable for our community projects. Are you offering me a job, little brother? I'm offering you a partnership, he said seriously. Bennett and Bennett, just like Dad always wanted. Tears pricked at my eyes as I looked around at what we built together. Not just the physical structures, but the renewed sense of purpose, the strengthened bond between us. Partners, I agreed, shaking his hand formally before pulling him into a hug. Later that evening, we sat in Dad's old study, now our shared office. His portrait seemed to smile down at us as we worked on plans for our next project. You know what I just realized? Marcus said suddenly. When everything fell apart for both of us, first me, then you with James, it wasn't really an ending. It was just making space for something better. I thought about my journey, from ambitious corporate lawyer to homeless divorcee to someone who had finally found her true purpose. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember what matters most, I replied. Family, Marcus nodded. Dad always said that was the foundation everything else is built on. As we continued working into the night, I felt a deep sense of peace. The Bennett siblings had come full circle from childhood partners in play to estranged adults to true partners in continuing our father's legacy. We had faced down criminals, rebuilt from ashes, and discovered that the most important things in life aren't the ones you can buy or sell. They're the bonds that hold you together when everything else falls apart. Our story wasn't just about saving a family business. It was about saving each other, about remembering who we were meant to be all along. As I looked at my brother, now both my business partner and my closest friend, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because that's what family does. They build each other up, they stand together, and they never forget what matters most. The Bennett legacy would continue, stronger than ever, built on a foundation of family, integrity, and purpose, just as Dad had always intended.